Hi, Mike.
Hello.
Hi. Do you go by Mike or Michael?
It really doesn't. I had to change it to Mike because I had another Michael on the team. But it doesn't matter to me. Whatever's easier.
I'm
So.
going through that right now. I have another Melissa that just joined my team. I'm already getting her emails and Slack messages.
Yeah, it's the bummer part about having a common name, I suppose.
Yeah.
I'll appreciate the invite.
Yeah, definitely. This will be interesting. We'll just wait a couple more minutes to get a few others to join that might be interested. And of course, these are all recorded, so we'll post this afterwards as well. So anyone who missed the presentation can go back and look.
Perfect. Sounds good.
This is the awkward silence. We need some music or something.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll get started here in a bit. Kara was double booked today, so I'm running things today.
And this week is the confusing week, so
it is.
So like the attendance may be lower than usual.
Yeah, I appreciate having all the recordings available too. I've been going back through and watching previous presentations that were given. It's nice to have. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I know, we all have our day we want to get to. The one thing I do want to mention before Mike presents today on open feature is just that we need to change our meeting time because most of the world is now on a different time zone. And I guess normally we hold this at 1500 UTC in the summer. So next time, I just got admin privileges on the public calendar, so I'll make sure that gets changed on the public calendar and so that you can add those. Other than that, let's go ahead and move on to Mike's presentation.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, well, I appreciate the invite today. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Mike. I work at Dynatrace. I'm in the Detroit area, and we just kicked off a new initiative called Open Feature. So we're basically just laying the initial foundation here. But the idea is trying to make feature flagging more available to everyone, basically by more or less commoditizing the SDK portion of it and making it so it's really easy to get started. And I'll kind of show you how we're hoping to do that. So if you're familiar with OpenTelemetry, it's an extremely popular project, part of the CNCF right now. And they basically did the same thing, but for observability data. They made it so the community came together, built a specification, and then released SDKs around observability collection across a huge array of technologies. We basically want to do that, but for feature flagging. So to do that, we wanted to define an open standard in a vendor neutral way. We also wanted to create like a unified API and SDK, and that would be based on the specification that we create. We also wanted to provide a developer first cloud native implementation. So what I mean by that is basically like, if you think about a traditional like feature flag lifecycle, right now you either have to build your own solution or go directly to a vendor. And then that would definitely create some code, vendor lock-in effectively at the code level. What we wanted to do is have, kind of a vendor agnostic SDK. And if you happen to be in the Kubernetes world, we'll provide an operator that can handle a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes for you. So you'd be able to really test out how feature flagging could work with very low barrier of entry. But of course, it would be great if we took, the open telemetry model here, where we have a very good feature set. You can get started, you can understand the value of feature flagging. But as soon as you start getting into things like maybe audit logs and other more kind of enterprisey features, we'd have a path for offering commercial offerings here. So any vendor would be able to basically tie into the system. And I can show an example of that in a few minutes. But the idea basically is you could provide an upgrade path essentially from the open source. Right now, we looked at the current ecosystem and feature flags, and really, there's a lot of SDKs that are effectively doing the same thing. We actually have quite a few vendors on board already, and that was their comments as well. If you look at it, I mean, fundamentally, they do basically the same thing. So there's a lot of, essentially wasted effort building the same thing across companies. They're also, almost all of them are open source, so you can look through them right now, but they're basically maintained just by the vendor themselves. I mentioned this earlier, but we really see vendor lock-in at the code level is a bit of an issue here. It would be people would be a little reluctant to modify their code, basically across the entire code base with specific, vendors in mind, just in case they ever had to switch for whatever reason. Makes it a much trickier topic to migrate to other providers based on, changing use cases and needs. Also, they're not really using cloud native capabilities. I'll get into that in just a little bit. And then from Dynatrace's perspective, it's missing integration with observability data, specifically open telemetry. And that's a really interesting possibility for us, where we can add additional telemetry data to a distributed trace. So we could see how flags, or across a single trace, affected overall performance metrics, for example. So our proposed solution is coming together and creating an open standard. It would allow new and existing feature flag solutions to basically become spec compliant. This would make it much easier to have a single entry point for developers that could use basically any backend system. We wanted to build a vendor agnostic SDK. So this will be probably our main focus for the next few months, is releasing something that it would be the primary entry point for developers, and then the backend like flag evaluation logic would be up to, basically we're calling it a provider, but it'd basically be the backend provider that you register would be the one responsible for the evaluation logic. We want to natively support open telemetry, so that really ties nicely into the CNCF, but enhancing distributed traces. There's a lot of interesting opportunities around collecting metrics and then correlating that with flag evaluations. And then they are also, it would provide us the opportunity to do request scope context. So if you look at examples of feature flag management systems, almost all of them are driven off of context. So you'd pass in some metadata to a flag evaluation and try to determine, and that would be used to make the flag evaluation decision. So what we could do here is we could attach metadata to the request, and downstream services could use that metadata in their flag decisions. So there's some pretty interesting opportunities there. We also wanted to provide a Kubernetes focused implementation, and that would allow people to really, if you're in the Kubernetes world, to experiment with feature flags incredibly easily. So at a really high level, this was our proposed Kubernetes native architecture. Effectively, the interesting part here would be to inject a sidecar process that would handle the flag evaluation. And that would allow us to keep the SDKs incredibly light and not have to do any of the flag evaluation logic in each library. We could have a standard flag evaluation process that would handle the actual evaluation logic. In this example, we're also looking at potentially using a custom resource definition in Kubernetes to define the flags themselves, which would allow us to just tap into like the existing etcd data store for storing the flags. That would just be for the Kubernetes native piece. If I have time, I can show you some sample code that would show like this would just be one of the many providers that you could theoretically register. So currently, we're basically just doing research at this point. I published a research repository a couple days ago. The people involved in Open Feature right now are discussing different topics on there. I'm also doing some community outreach to find vendors in the space and other people that are interested, trying to get as much feedback as possible. I think it's extremely important to have a solid spec because it's pretty difficult to change once we kind of lock that into version 1. So a lot of time and energy has gone into the research at this point, and it really hasn't translated into a spec at this point, but I think that's going to be happening in the next few weeks. So if this is an area of interest, I would certainly encourage you to join sooner than later so you can help define the spec. In terms of milestones, so we're basically right here in the mission, governance, vision, initial scope, and architecture state. We have quite a few people on board or have declared interest already, which is great. And I've been meeting with a number of different groups, organizations, companies, just to try to let them know what we're working on, invite them to participate. We're really hoping to have some kind of alpha release so we can show how it works at KubeCon EU. And hopefully that can really help sell some of the visions that we have in mind. The August one is kind of arbitrary, honestly. I think I just had to fill the gap on the chart here, but basically, we also want to make sure that observability is a first-class citizen as part of this. And then we're really hoping to have something that we can kind of announce as like a GA or a 1.0 release at KubeCon US, which happens to be in Detroit, which is really close to my house. So pretty exciting opportunity, I'd say, to attend the event and announce something cool. Yeah, so yeah, we are still in kind of the project bootstrapping phase. So it's a great time if you have any interest, to join. We did apply to be a CNCF sandbox project. I'm still waiting to hear back. Apparently the March 6th time where they were supposed to talk about it, they ran out of time. So we got bumped to the next meeting. Hopefully we'll hear something soon, but apparently they've already been, kind of, they know about the project. So hopefully it's a pretty easy, process. We are still working on just trying to get as many people involved as possible. We don't want this to be like a Dynatrace thing. It should really be a community thing. And then, yeah, just working on the research and the spec itself. Really just need to nail down the spec. We want to get that proof of concept out as soon as possible. My research does include a proof of concept, but I think we'd want to have something that users themselves could try out. So that'd be a short-term goal. And then preparing some kind of public announcement. So it's not that we're keeping it secret, but it's not something that people can really tangibly use at the moment. So it's kind of been, I don't know, say a soft launch. So cool. If you are interested, we have a very, very basic webpage available. We also are part of the CNCF Slack channel. You can find us under Open Feature. There's just a dedicated channel there. And we do have a interested party page that you could open a pull request for. It doesn't mean that you have to be terribly involved. It just shows that this is an area of interest for you. You can be invited to the community meetings, and we'd certainly love to get your feedback. It happens every 2 weeks is our community meeting sync. And here is a handful of links. I can share this presentation with you as well if you guys have docs or something that we can associate this with. But yeah, I certainly love to have anyone. So that is basically it. If there's time, I could give a quick demo. If there's not, I can certainly hand it back to you, Melissa.
Love a demo.
Perfect.
If
Okay.
you've got something prepped,
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great to look at.
Cool. So this is, I'd say, hot off the press, and there's a lot of discussion happening around it right now. But I do think it does a decent job selling our end goal. If we look here, basically under our application here. So this is just an incredibly basic REST endpoint. And in this case, it's just a simple GET request with a message. What you see here is we have open feature, and at the moment we have a method name is enabled with a flag ID. So it's very standard. You see this across basically any feature flag system. You'll see that we're registering the client. One thing you may notice if you're familiar with other feature flag tools, that we're not registering, like we're not passing in like an API token or any kind of config for where like the flag evaluation occurs. I'll get into that in a second, but to kind of spoil my demo to some extent, it's because we're not at the moment. We're actually not registering a provider. So if we go here and I run the no-op demo, it basically will behave with the default value. So we should see when I open this up that we are getting the wrong screen. One sec. There we go. So welcome to the API. So this is the fallback value or the no-op operation here. The reason that's interesting is because we can provide a provider. So without having to change our code here. So that's a very interesting component to it. So now if we want to move into, let's say, a environment variable demo. So if we go in here, let's say here's our feature flag, and I will just say this is off for now. That is implemented just by this. The logic is extremely basic, but you can see that we're looking at environment variables on the system, and if it happens to be true, it's true, otherwise it's false. So let me just start the demo with this provider. And what's happening here, kind of behind the scenes, this is kind of an implementation detail, but it's probably important to understand. We are injecting the environment variable demo before the rest of the application starts. And if we look into here, all it does is use this open feature and register a provider. So now if we go here, it's going to work exactly how it did before. But you can see that this was the flag, this was the value, this is coming from the provider itself. So now if we were to change this to true, we do have to restart it in this case. Wait one sec, and we refresh, you get exactly what you'd expect. So pretty basic, but the nice part is, and the thing to highlight is, you did not have to change your code in order to change basically the backend provider for the flag evaluation. Or if you did, and you happen to have this registration in your code, it would be in a single place. You wouldn't have to go change, all of the different places where flags are being evaluated. Cool. On to the next one. So this one is, imagine now that you want to go to some commercial offering for feature flag management. And in this case, I'll just show like the harness one. There's hundreds of vendors, it seems. So this is just because I was just working on it. That's the only reason I'm picking this. And if you look in here, all we're doing, this is extremely basic, but we are using their client to effectively do the flag evaluation behind the scenes. If we were to go into, I'm going to pick this Fibonacci package. So this is like going the scenario where maybe you're at a large company where different teams work on different parts of the code, and then maybe you share it across services. In this case, for some reason, your company cares about generating the nth digit of Fibonacci, and they want to release this package. In this case, they're using the open feature, and they're using the variant option. So instead of returning a Boolean, this is actually a string value, and we're using that to determine which algorithm to run. So if we were to start this one up now, and we go back to here. So let's do the 44th digit. Run it. It takes a second. You can see down here that we ran the recursive algorithm. And I think if we scroll up a little bit too, we can see, did I run the wrong one? I did. Interesting. So I actually, this is another interesting part too, though. I ran the split demo. So this is a completely different vendor. So I guess we'll pivot and use the split one instead. But it still works exactly the same. So that it just, you can basically hot swap the backend provider in this case. So if we log into Split, give me 1 second. Well, yeah, I guess we have time, right? If I do this, perfect. Yeah. Okay. I will.
Oh, yeah, you're fine.
I'll do this real quick because the last part would just be showing how this is visualized in a distributed trace. So we're almost through, but let me throw the screen up. So here we go. Here is the fib algo split in split.io. Splits are basically feature flags in their environment. If we were to go down into the set default rule, let's try to do this algorithm and we will save it. Confirm. And then hopefully, sometimes we have to kind of do that, but hopefully this is going to be incredibly fast. This algorithm is lightning quick. So if we refresh it, it's going to be hard to tell, but it's done already. So now if we go look at how this could be maybe visualized. So now that we've hooked this into OpenTelemetry, we have additional information on a distributed trace. If we go into Zipkin, I can actually go find a trace. I should be able to run it. We can see that we have a Fibonacci call here that was done 2 minutes ago that took 4.3 seconds. If I were to look at it, we would see a span here that has the flag evaluation. And we can see Split was the provider here. Recursive was the algorithm that was run. Fibonacci was the client library that was run. So you have a lot of information here to actually understand why this call took so long. Now, if we were to go back to the one that was fast, we can look down here and see that basically this was the reason that it was fast. There are a few other areas of interest that could be nice to kind of tie into this. So it was a little bit more easy to tell that the algorithm itself was kind of the root cause of the performance issue. But this is definitely a good start and a nice way to tell pretty easily that the same request varies wildly in terms of performance based on the flag value. So that is basically it for my demo. Is there any questions?
Any questions? All the information to get involved is on the website, right?
It is, yep. And I'll send it to you on Slack right after this too, so you can put the presentation and a couple links, wherever you document your stuff.
Cool. Yeah, I can see that this would be valuable. I know it seems when you're thinking about it in advance, as far as providing feature flags for an application, I can see that, you need to think about it first so that you can compartmentalize it, right? And have it be able to be dynamic and changeable. But I can see, just having a standard way of doing that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I think there's some pretty interesting opportunities. You could even, probably relevant to this group, if you had something as part of your pipelines, you could theoretically have certain maybe tests that only, or certain quality gates, I guess, potentially, that could test certain features without it being enabled for every other user. So those could be some interesting ways to basically get pretty early feedback about potential issues with new features without impacting real users, especially because you're maybe a hardening or certainly a production environment would is something that's hard to replicate locally. But if you're able to kind of safely test these features, I think that's where feature flags could be pretty powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. Well, thank you very much, Mike. That was great. I'm curious about it. I'm going to go check it out, and I'll make sure to include, if you have slides, I'll make sure we can. Are you okay with sharing all of that?
Yeah, that's no problem.
With the group. All right.
Yep.
Cool. Awesome.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks for the time.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right. Well, as far as anything else, I mean, this was the star of the show. Michael was a star today. Do we have any other topics we want to discuss? I know we still have open PRs out. I think most that are involved aren't on this call today. So maybe we want to save that to the next meeting, but continue to look over these PRs, and at some point we need to merge those in.
Yeah, hopefully you
Right.
don't mind. I'm just sticking around out of interest.
Yeah, no,
just
that's
curious
okay.
to see how you're running the group. So
Yeah. Just for curiosity, if you're, just to show, let me share my screen real quick and I'll just show what we have going on right now that is active. So we have some discussions about pipeline steps that is going on. We have this this pull request out. There's a bunch of comments on here if you're interested in what we're talking about and how we're thinking of proposing this, standardizing pipeline steps and how to describe them and using the right terminology, that kind of stuff. We've got a lot of discussion happening here. A lot of work has been put into this. And then in addition to that, we had a discussion about pipeline stages and the terminology that, in general, organizations use for their pipelines. A lot of work also done here on that subject. And these have been open for a while. We've been, pretty active in commenting on these and making some changes to these pull requests. And then most recently, I think this is when I joined the group, most recently we started talking about quality gates and just an interesting discussion about what types of quality gates are out there. We all have our different ideas of what's important and how to move our software along the development cycle, but everyone has different priorities, and it's been interesting to collect just, what types of quality gates people run, when they are run. And it's very, very much related to pipeline steps as well. So we may see some interaction there between those two subjects.
Mm-hmm.
But again, lots of discussion here if you're interested in taking a look and commenting. Like I said, these have been out for a while, so we're going to start working on merging these in and then possibly making modifications if needed later on.
Cool. Yeah. Appreciate the overview.
Yeah. All of our notes are here. I tagged, who all was here today. I'll also send out, of course, the recording and all of that when I send out meeting minutes for this to the group. Of course, if you're interested in joining the group, if you aren't on the mailing list, definitely get on that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And
Perfect.
I think that is pretty much all we have today.
And the last thing, yes, this code owners file, Melissa, you remember you updated.
Oh, that's right.
I just approved it, so
Okay.
to make sure people who are active in the SIG and members can get notifications for review. So feel free to submit it.
Excellent. Thank you, Viti. All right, if nothing else, I move to go ahead and close up this meeting, and we'll meet again next month, I guess. And again, I'll make sure to have the meeting date with the updated time, the updated UTC time on the public calendar.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Yeah. Nice to meet everyone. Thanks again for the time.
Thanks again, Mike.
All right. Bye.
Bye.